Well, hello out there. Welcome to the B Sound Podcast. Today is Friday. It is July 2nd of 2021. And it's time again for that Friday solo podcast. So what do we have to talk about today? You know, I'm kind of excited about tonight. I'm going to go out tonight for the first time in a long time and check out a band. I'm going to go see Fitz and the Tantrums. And the way that came about is pretty interesting. Essentially what happened was, for those of you in the know, I was part of a YouTube channel and still am part of a YouTube channel known as the Game Beaters. And essentially what we do is play retro games. We started out as we'd riff on the games, kind of doing Let's Plays and things like that. And as it moved on, we did... Well, I had actually did reviews before that. I wanted to do sarcastic reviews, kind of like Angry Video Game Nerd, but something in more of my style. I'm more sarcastic than I am angry. So I did these sarcastic reviews, and then that transitioned into trying to do funny Let's Plays, which is essentially a podcast in its own right. But the way we did it was... Adam or Dick Boots and I would get together and riff on the game while we were playing it and just talk about whatever. And then eventually Evil Dan came in and we started doing 3 people. So the way these tickets came about was that along the way we've made quite a few friends. And one of those friends happens to be a local dude. And I won't say his name because it's just out of respect, but he had some extra tickets to this Fitz and the Tantrums show that's going on tonight. And he hit me up on the Game Beaters Discord and said, "Hey, you want a ticket?" And I'm like, "Sure." Well, he's like, "You can have 2 tickets, actually," because the people we were going to take, it just didn't work out. So I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And I invited a few people. I thought he's taking his fiance, and I thought, oh, this is kind of maybe more of a date situation. I kind of put my feelers out, and nothing quite worked out. So I knew that Dick Boots is a fan of Fitz and the Tantrum. So I was like, I just need to ask him and let him know, hey, I've tried the date thing, and that wasn't working. And I know you're a big fan, so why don't you go with me? And so that's what worked out. He's going to go with me. But the interesting thing about that, because this guy reached out to me through the Game Beaters Discord, and I needed to contact Adam about this, I went ahead and spoke with Adam, and it just seemed like we both had the night free and thought, hey, let's go do a Game Beaters, not podcast, but a Game Beaters stream where we live stream in front of people. And we played Ninja Gaiden. And we did it. Yeah, we played Ninja Gaiden and got pretty far in the game. But mainly we were there just to have fun and, talk with everybody because I think we stopped doing Game Beaters back in March, which is when I found out I had this heart condition thing. And there were some other factors on top of that led to it being over in the sense of it's not going to be that same thing ever again. And I'm not saying that we'll never do the 3 people that were basically the foundation. I know Evil Dan will come on and guest once in a while or something like that. But we really want to retool it into something different. Maybe Game Beaters 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever you want to call it. And that'll be a lot of fun, I think. We're still kind of working and deciding what that means and what that's going to be. But for now, it was great to just get on and see everybody again. See all the old folks that hadn't seen in a while. And talk to some people. And I found out about a gaming convention here in Iowa. The Iowa Gaming Classic, I think it's called, something like that. I still need to look into that. I tried looking. They said there was a Facebook invite thing, and I did not see anything about it. So I'm still looking for that. And admittedly, I haven't tried that hard. But I've looked a little bit. I just don't see it. Maybe someone can link it to me. That'd be great. But I know like Gaming Off the Grid, which is another Iowa based out of Des Moines gaming channel, and they're also in a band. They are going to be there on the panel or whatever they have going on there. So shout out to those guys. And what else happened this week? I started the week off at the casino, and I hadn't been to the casino for a long time, and people have been inviting me, and I kind of been staying away from it. I figure if I'm going to lose money in anything, I'm going to lose it in crypto, right? So I've been putting all my extra money into cryptocurrency just to have some kind of investment going on, rather than flat out just losing everything or having a nice big payday at the casino. I figure investing might be just a little more, I wouldn't say safe, but it makes a little more sense, because it's rare that you're going to lose your entire shirt in investing like you would at the casino. And yeah, I went with $100 in hand and left minus 200. So that's how bad it went for me. And it's like I could have taken that 200 and thrown it into crypto or another investment and seen my money possibly grow. And if not, pull it out and still have half of it left, something like that. Anyway, it started off the week as like, man, I just was not happy with myself and my choices. And it sucks losing. It sucks losing money, but I guess you learn from it. And that's the important part is, okay, well, now I know if I'm going to the casino, do not spend more than what you plan to spend to begin with. Don't fall into that trap of, hey, I know I spent 100, but I could maybe get that 100 back if I just pulled out a little more. Yeah, that's where they get you. And you don't want to be a victim to that. I don't want to be anyway. So that was annoying. But I think I learned something, and that's next time I have extra money, I'm going to invest it. Sure, the casino's fun, and maybe I'll go out there again, spend a little less money, and just know, like, hey, this is just fun. This is what I'm doing with my money, is having fun, and not expect anything out of it. So I think it's mostly just a mindset, really, because you think about it, money itself is just a mindset. It's not even reality other than what we've come to think about money, what we've come to believe about it. It's just something we agreed upon that, hey, this is worth something. But anyway, that kicked off kind of like that was my weekend. And I had a couple things scheduled with people that I was supposed to meet up with during the week, and everything kept getting canceled. Like every single one by one, kept getting canceled or pushed back. Including like things for this podcast where it was like, I'd try to schedule something with somebody and they'd say yes. And I'd be like, yes, that's awesome. I can't wait to speak with this person because, there's someone I admire, or there's someone I think that can add value to people. And what was happening was they'd say yes, and then they wouldn't commit. And sometimes not even like write back or answer the emails back after saying yes. So I decided to set up an appointment schedule, which is essentially the scheduler thing, essentially makes it easy to schedule stuff. I do a lot of the podcasts over Zoom. And so what happened was I set up this scheduler, and it's an app. And essentially you pay for this app, you pay a little bit of money. I think it's a couple bucks a month, and it connects with Zoom. So when you send them the link, you send the person interested in being on the podcast the link, they pick a date and a time that I'm open to do the podcast that works for them, and it automatically schedules everything. And it's like perfect. And it's got things where the person who is going to be on the podcast fills out any information they want to discuss on the podcast. So if they have a book coming out and they want to make sure we talk about the book or something like that, maybe something I'm not aware of, they can put that. And it's got things for links and stuff, so it makes it really easy for me to copy and paste those links and put them in the description so people can find these people. Because, if I have someone on, it's someone that I feel like adds value to somebody. And they're going to want to be able to find those people to further themselves if they like the information that person's giving. So it just makes things easier all around. And I'm really happy with how that's working out now, because now it's like, hey, the ball's in your court. I've sent you this. You said yes. I sent you this schedule thing. All you have to do is click a button saying when you can do it out of the available times. And that's it. And, I can follow up a few times, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So that helped my annoyance level go down a bit. And then we do have some Q&A stuff going on this week, too. So I've got a couple of questions that people asked over Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And you can always ask here in the comments below if you want to go ahead and ask. And, while you're doing that, you might as well subscribe. Gotta love the YouTuber in me. You always got to ask people to subscribe and that kind of thing. But, some people forget. Sometimes it's like, oh, yeah, I do like this. I'm going to subscribe. Why haven't I done that yet? So it's worth reminding people, I think, especially if you're, trying to do podcasts or YouTube or whatever you're trying to do. It doesn't hurt to remind people, like, you can check this out at any time. We got more stuff for you and that kind of thing. I mean, yeah, people get sick of hearing it, but we're also so used to it that it's just a thing now. You're like, okay, here's the plug. And, as a funny aside, speaking of plugs, I was talking with my buddy Jeremy one day. This is just a funny little story. And I was talking about a podcast I'd listened to that Peter Buck had been on. And, he was like, what was Peter Buck there for? And I was like, oh, he was plugging this album that he had done, this recent project he'd done, and it sounded like it'd be pretty cool. And Jeremy's response was something like, so it was nothing more than a Peter Buck plug. And I was like, yeah, and I started cracking up, and he's like, what's so funny? He didn't even realize what he said. And to me, it was one of the funniest things I'd ever heard, which is a Peter Buck plug. I was like, where do you insert that? The Peter Buck plug. Oh, man. For a while, we were throwing that around as a band name, the Peter Buck Plugs. Oh, man. Anyway, that got me a chuckle, but that's an aside, right? So this week also saw, as you guys might know, the Bobobot thing. Once a month, I write and release a song to the people who are in the Singularity Club. And that's going to be on the upcoming album in 2022 called The Duality, which is the follow-up to the Singularity. And this song is called The Thick of It. And wow, this was a hard one to get to. If you had watched last week's podcast, the solo cast, I believe on that I said I'm basically done with the song, that I had written it and I had an acoustic part and I was a melody and I was writing the lyrics and it was just about finished. Well, so I hated it. I ended up I kept going back to it. I'm like, I just don't like this. It's just not good. So the song is due by the 1st of the month. So I decided I hated it on the 30th of last month, which is the last day before I have to get it out. So I just said, you know what? I have not much going on today. I finished up my daily work. And I just said, I'm dedicating today to writing a good song. Not even a good song, just writing a song that I like. Because I don't think if you set out to write a good song, you might be disappointed. But if you set out to just write something that you at least like yourself, then it's a decent starting point. You're not putting way too much pressure on yourself. And I thought, if nothing comes of it, I still have this old song I don't really care for. But I don't want that to really end up on the album. So it kind of gave me a stick and a carrot, so to speak. And yeah, I buckled down, and I woke up that morning already knowing, like, okay, I'm going to just try something else because I'm just not liking that song. And I started playing something, and immediately I was like, I already like this better. And the song just poured out from there. I started playing the chorus, I started singing, and immediately I had a melody, I had a verse, I had a chorus, and I was like, wow, I'm going to record this. And by noon that day, I had everything done except for maybe parts of the second verse that I needed to tweak just a little bit. And so I basically got the entire song done on the 30th. And then the first came around. And I did some finishing touches to it. I added a string section to it and a couple little flourishes. And kind of Bobobot it up, where it's kind of a funny term. I don't know how else to put it, but like back in the day, I heard about Nirvana, and Kurt would bring a song in to Chris and Dave, and they would Nirvana-ize it, so it would sound okay with Kurt on acoustic or whatever, but once the band got a hold of it, it became this bigger, grander thing. And so with Bobobot, I kind of take that idea, and it's like, well, here's the song as I wrote it. Now, what would Bobobot do with it? And it goes from there. I use that Bobobot personality to lift the song to a new dimension and add that signature Bobobot thing to it. It's really weird because it's like there's multiple characters going on in my head to be able to accomplish this. So it's weird, but it's a lot of fun. And I think anybody who hears this song, it's definitely like a standout of the album. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because it's very different. It's a different vibe than the rest of the album, and yet it still kind of fits. And it's supposed to because it's telling a story. I do have a story written out for the entire album, and each song has to cover a specific part of that story. So it's more like I have this outline, and then like, okay, well, how do I get from here to here to here to here and tell the complete story? So that finally came out, and I sent it off to a few friends that I trust their ear, and they'll let me know, like, okay, yeah, this sounds great, but maybe there's too much low end, or I can't hear what's going on in this second verse, or that kind of thing. And I sent it off, and the friends that I sent it to all unanimously said, like, yes, this is fine. I think it sounds good. Cool song. I dig it. That kind of thing. So that worked out. And it's not like I don't think they'd lie to me, because they've told me in the past with other songs, like, wow, that's awful. Not the song itself, but a certain mix choice or something. So when I get feedback from all three about a certain thing, it's like, okay, yeah, I know that part probably needs some work. But luckily, because this one waited till the 10th hour of the 10th day of the 10th second, I'm glad that nothing needed fixed, even though I went back and I fixed a few things myself after a few listens to the one I sent them. And now I dig it. I dig where it went, and I'm glad that it's out there for people. So yeah, if you can, check that out. Bandcamp, Danby Music at .bandcamp.com, I think it is. And it's in the Singularity Club. Yeah, I'll put a link in the description if I remember. And then, so let's get on to the music section. My music recommendations, the things that I've been listening to this week. This is going to be no shock to anybody who listens to this podcast or knows me. Poppy dropped a new single, and it's called Her. I dig the shit out of it. It's pretty great. It's like the video itself reminds me of something Tool might put out. It's got that kind of vibe where, like Sober, like that video for Sober, where it's got kind of living dolls running around and doing things that are Uncanny Valley-esque, and it looks a little bit off, and yet you can still totally feel the vibe and where the song is coming from. And the song itself is, I've seen it get a couple, some criticism that it sounds like maybe Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne, which I can kind of hear it in the melody, but the song itself doesn't sound like Skater Boy. And is that such a bad thing anyway? You know, that song's old enough now where you can reuse some of that melody. Who cares? The song itself has nothing to do with Skater Boy. It's very much a personal song. You can tell about a traumatic event that the writer has been through. And how you overcome that event. And I'm all about that kind of stuff, right? This is what we're about over here on this channel, is overcoming your shit. You know, that's why I'm doing these podcasts and stuff, is to talk to people who are good at overcoming their shit. And, and artists and other things like that. But anyway, so that's a pretty good song. I dig that one. I recommend you check it out. Another thing I saw this week, which I think was fantastic, was I'm a big Beatles fan, and I'm also a Tenacious D fan, and they put out a cover of You Never Give Me Your Money. And I only saw this because Paul McCartney retweeted it. And the video is fantastic. The music's fantastic. The video is low budget and perfect for Tenacious D. It just works out really well for those guys. And they changed the lyrics up where to make it more Tenacious D-like. It's just really well done. The harmonies are spot on, like you'd expect. And it's a flat-out acoustic tune. A lot of scat in there. You know, if you know Tenacious D and you know Jack Black, there's a lot of scat going on. Especially, there's a part towards the end of that sequence of You Never Give Me Your Money, before it goes into the end. The song, The End, by the way. We know Ringo does this drum solo. And also there's guitar solos in there, and they just scat that whole part out, you know, the reck-a-tick-tick-tick-tick-tick, that kind of thing. And it's perfect. It's just done really well. I'd highly recommend it if you like that song or you like Tenacious D at all and what they do. Great thing. And then another recommendation that I'm not even sure about yet. This was recommended to me. It's a band called Black Midi, and I'm checking out their new album called Cavalcade. And I really don't know what to think of this one. This one's like, I've heard that that's kind of what it is. It's a bit of a mind-blowing album. They're kind of a band that is not conventional and does things a bit sideways. And they are far from conventional. And there might be a little bit difficult to ingest at first. And I know I'm not through the whole thing at all. I've only listened to maybe 3 or 4 songs, and that was enough, because it was like, it's kind of a mind barrage where you're like, wow, how do I even take this in? But it is fascinating at the same time. So I'm not sure if I recommend it, but I definitely recommend like you check it out and see what you think. I'd love to hear what you think of it. If it's your thing, or you're like, how do people listen to this? I'd love to know what you think of them. But yeah, they're called Black Midi, M-I-D-I. And then the book that I've read this week is called The Art of Saying No. And that's by Damon Zahariades. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, but it's Zahariades. And the book's called The Art of Saying No. And essentially, this book is about just what the title says, the art of saying no. But it kind of goes through things like, why is it important that you say no? You know, to have the, what do you call it? The personal, to have the personal power, I suppose, to say no to people. And also it gives you kind of tactics and techniques on saying no. You know, it kind of explains, like, the more you say yes to something you don't want to do, the more you're really doing a disservice to everybody, yourself and the person who you say yes to. Because if your heart's not in it, you know, and you're saying yes to do it, it's not good for you, and it's not going to help them as much as maybe someone else whose heart would really be in it. Now, of course, you want to pick those battles, and you know, you don't want to just say no because, oh, this is hard. I want to say no to it. But it's like things that just go against your whole personal ethics or whatever, and some people really have a hard time saying no to those things. And it's not like I particularly needed to read this book, but I'm in this, I'm kind of in this, I don't know what you would call it, I subscribe to this book of the week kind of club. And this was the book of the week where we learn about the book and discuss it and kind of, you know, what information can you get out of the book that is helpful and share with others. But yeah, the book is called The Art of Saying No. It's got some great, like, tactical information, like, you know, if you have to say no to somebody that's sensitive about these kind of things, it's got things you can say and things that most people are understanding of. You know, like, let's say somebody's like, hey, will you have a drink with me? And you don't drink. It's very easy to just say, like, hey, I don't do that. I've made a commitment that I don't drink. You know, and most people don't want you to break your commitments. Most people understand, like, oh, that's a commitment. Okay, I get it. You know. And of course, if you're being honest about it, that's perfect. Like, just be honest and say no. And, you know, not that they need a reason necessarily, but if you got to give one, if you feel like, and that's the whole thing. If you feel like you need to give one, you have good reasons, I'm sure. So anyway, that's my book of the week. I dig that one. And of course, TVs and movies. Watched Rick and Morty again. It's getting better. I like that one. It was a good one. It was Mortiplicity about how there was many Rick and Mortys, and because the original Rick made a clone of the family as decoys, and then those clones didn't know they were clones, so they made clones of themselves, and so on and so forth. Just like the movie Multiplicity with what's his name? Michael Keaton. After a while, you make a clone of a clone. It's like making a copy of a copy, and you start to degrade the original material until it's, you know, in the show the clones start becoming less and less human and made out of different material, and just, it's pretty wacky, but it was fun, and they always make sure that the logic works within the universe. So yeah, Rick and Morty's still quality. And then I actually binge watched Loki up until, I didn't watch this week's episode, but yeah, Loki was good. I'm enjoying that show for the most part. It's basically, the reason I even bring it up is because it's basically Rick and Morty. Like, they took an episode of Rick and Morty and stretched it out to make this series of Loki and kind of put Loki in that Rick and Morty type of universe. So, yeah, if you like Rick and Morty, you'll probably end up liking Loki. And apparently they even got a writer from Rick and Morty to write Loki, so it just makes sense that I mention it. Other than that, I really don't watch much TV. And I haven't seen any movies, so I can't really recommend any movies this week. All right, so let's get to the Q&A this week. I got 3 questions. We'll go ahead and start with Ice Pirate's question, which is, what is your most oddball musical influence? Now, I'm not sure what oddball musical influence means, but the most wacky music I listen to is probably like Weird Al or Ween. And I know Weird Al's not that weird. You know, he's kind of just a parody guy, but he's got some cool stuff that's original music. And it's okay. I like a lot of it. Whereas Ween, they are all over the musical map, and that's what I love about them. You never know what song you're going to get from them, what kind of song. It can be anything from a rap to reggae to an 80s ballad to a rock song to a metal song, punk rock. It just goes on and on and on. Their whole shtick is kind of like what the Beatles did, and that's just do all the genres. Just absorb themselves in a genre that they're into and do their best version of that genre. And I guess that's oddball. So yeah, I would guess that. Unless you're talking about like what wouldn't people expect? Because people who know me, they know I like the Beatles and I like Ween. But if you're talking about like what wouldn't they expect that I like, that's a weird one. Because I don't know. I can't tell what people would think of me from the outside. But, what's an oddball one that I like that people don't know about? Like a guilty pleasure, maybe. Man, I don't know. Maybe some Taylor Swift songs, something like that. I wouldn't really say I'm influenced too much by him, but every once in a while I'll hear something like on a mainstream radio station like Taylor Swift or Madonna or something. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I can dig that. I do like that melody. I like what they're doing there. It's a cool beat. That kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. That's probably the best answer I could give you there. On next question. Kamui says, what's the worst album you've ever listened to? Now, this one is funny. The worst album I've ever listened to is probably maybe one of the greatest albums I've listened to as well. And that is a record called Eat My Dump by the band called The Thrown-Ups. And the Thrown-Ups are fantastic. I first heard of them on an album called the Sub Pop 200. And they have a song called You Lost It. And it is maybe the worst song I've ever heard in my life, but in the best fucking way possible. I cannot describe to you the music of the Thrown-Ups. It's something you'd have to hear, but definitely like look up You Lost It by the Thrown-Ups. The best way I can describe it is if you gave people who don't know how to play instruments each a guitar, give one of them a bass, throw one on the drums, and give a guy a vocal mic. And you shouted out a song name like Eat My Dump. And they had to write a song in 5 minutes, not knowing anything about the instruments or anything. That's what these songs sound like to me. Like they don't know what they're doing, and they're trying really hard to do it anyway, and using their conviction to do so. It's awful, but at the same time, it's amazing. It's got some parts that are just like, that is great. That's just fantastic for not knowing what you're doing. And I could be wrong. Maybe they're great musicians and they know exactly what they're doing, and they're trying to be awful in the best way. I don't know. Either way, it works for me. So I'd say Eat My Dump by the Thrown Ups is maybe the worst album I've ever listened to. All right, and one final question before we wrap up here. And that's from Brandon Azu. And he wrote this on Facebook. He asks, how do you work through bouts of writer's block or feeling uninspired? How do you get out of that funk? Or just simply what inspires you? So the way I work through writer's block or feeling uninspired is I grind through it. I just do it. It's kind of like talking about the songs earlier in this podcast about the Bobobot song. Like, I will write the bad song and then write the good one. Sometimes you got to give yourself permission to write that shitty song. And then you write a shitty song, you write another shitty song, you're just like, get it out of your system. Let it go. Who cares? Like, writer's block is like you being afraid to write a shitty song. So just don't be afraid to write it. Just write that shitty song, let it go. Nobody has to ever hear it, or people can hear it. Who cares? And then get to that good one. Just keep writing, and eventually a good song will come out. There's an interesting experiment. I was just reading about this, where they took a group of 20 people, and they had them make clay pots. And they gave them the same tools to learn how to make clay pots. And they took 10 people, and these 10 people, they said, make the best single clay pot you can. And then the other group of 10 people, they said, make as many clay pots as possible using our techniques. And the group that were able to make as many as possible not only made way more clay pots, because that was their goal, was just make as many as possible, but every single one of theirs was better than the people who just concentrated on making one clay pot for the week. So you get like 30 awesome clay pots on the one hand, where they have unlimited clay pots to make, whereas you take the 10 people, they each have one clay pot that they've made, and the quality isn't even as good as the people who got to make as many as possible. So to me, right there, that just says that your quantity will lead to quality. And it makes sense, right? Like, how do you master something? You do it over and over and over again until you master it. So just, to get out of writer's block, just say, you know what? I'm going to write this shitty song. Who cares if it's shitty? And just write it. And then if you are still a writer's block, say, I'm writing another shitty song. I don't even care. And eventually, one of those shitty songs is going to be like, you know what? This has got a kernel of something cool in it. And then you work on that and you get inspired. So yeah, that's how I think you get through writer's block. All right. Well, this has been a good B-Sound podcast. Like I said, these episodes come out every Friday, where I'm just speaking with myself. Next week, I think we might have 2 episodes, because I'm starting to get enough people on the podcast now where I think I can publish 2 a week. I'm not quite sure yet, but we'll see. This is kind of an evolving project. I'm excited to get these out there. And I've got some other guests coming up soon that I'm pretty excited about. And I think you're going to get a lot of value from this. I really appreciate everyone who comes here and checks it out. You're a pretty exclusive club right now. I think most of these podcasts, they get about 25 to 30 people checking them out. And that's got to be an interesting place, where you're kind of tuned in onto something that is going to go somewhere before anybody else. And you know who you are. And I do appreciate you very much. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're on this ride with me. And let's keep going. Let's ride this all the way down until we get to the end of the track, and then we'll come back. It'll be fun. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. New episode with the guests on Tuesday. Again, that's going to be on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, Deezer, anywhere. I don't know. Wherever you can get podcasts, you can hear it. And of course, it's going to be here on YouTube as well. For now, these episodes are going to be just on YouTube, and the solo episodes, I mean. And yeah, thank you very much. I hope you have a great day, have a great weekend, and be sound.